here we are on Agilists on Agile, and we're going to talk about some of the predictions for 2022.
Well, how about we start with probably the one that's the most obviously in front of us, and that's the nature of remote work. So, what I had heard previously is getting back to the office in person, which is such a critical part of collaborative work environments. I've become skeptical, that the back to the office model is going to take hold. I certainly doubt it will take hold that looks anything like it used to look like. There'll be pockets, I imagine. So my prediction is we have got to get used to virtual collaboration for the coming year. It's not going to go away or lessen in any drastic manner.
Well, I love that. Should I go ahead, Ernesto? I love that as well.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Dave?
Yeah, I'm hoping, frankly, that we never go back to exactly where we were. Ernesto and I talk about this all the time with training, right? And he often tells a story about how much time he'd spend going out there, getting on the plane, getting there, missing some connections. There's many things we can do effectively remotely. And if nothing else, my hope is people have seen that and it makes it really difficult to go back. I think, Peter, and I don't know where this is going to lay out, but we still want to find that cadence of something in person occasionally and figuring out what that is. And maybe that's a prediction for me for 2022. We start figuring out what's really needed. Is it once a quarter where we all need to get together? Is it in the office one day a week is enough? Where maybe we start getting some research, some good feedback on what's enough so that we don't lose the personal connections, which especially with agility are so key, that trust, and balance that with people's drive now to have much more flexible work from home arrangements.
Yeah. And by the way, Dave, my prediction was not meant to have a tone of lament, but just an acceptance of what I believe is likely come. I think my lament is probably more for those who really want to get back in person, that they may not be able to.
It's fair. Yeah. And I don't know about you, I've certainly got some clients who really love that in-person connection, right? A lot of extroverts, people who just, I think, miss that face-to-face contact. And I do occasionally as well. I love not having to travel, that's for sure.
I'm with you. I'm definitely with you on that. I mean, I know we're moving a little bit away from the prediction, but for me personally, I even turned down a work opportunity that was going to require travel. The way things are going right now, this isn't much of a prediction. We can just look at the news right now. Travel's a little iffy.
Look, I'll make a different prediction. And unrelated to COVID or remote work, every few years, I start seeing more articles saying Agile's dead, right? And for my days of investments, when I start seeing that, I know to feel like, well, that means Agile's certainly not dead, because the proclaimers seem to do it at every stage, and so I've been hearing a decent about that from other coaches lately, some blog posts, and interestingly, Ernesto and I are just getting off an engagement that kind of threads my thinking. Part of why I think we're so far away from the real concepts, the values, the principles, the mindsets being, quote, dead, are because we're still not doing a very good job of implementing it. We talk about whether you like the word transformation or not. Ernesto and I just got off something. It's a large company, thousands of people trying to transform. Hopefully we're coaching them not to do it all at once, but getting things in place so that we can do it successfully. The leadership, them not just saying, let's go Agile, but us really explaining, here's what that means for you. Here's what that means for the organization. Are you sure you're ready for this? So I say that because I still feel like most companies, most government agencies I go into have that feel. They they're not at the point where they're ready to accept what it's going to take to do agility well.
You told me raising my thumbs, Dave, right up to that. So your prediction is Agile is not dead.
Absolutely.
But it does require people to understand it better.
Absolutely. And if that's the new wave, they want new terms to throw, they want to call it DevSecOps or something else to do what we in agility have felt like we've been doing for many, many years, fine. It's still all going to come back to, though, if we're going to transition on a large scale, if we're going to help people on a large scale, I think we coaches need to help our clients get to a point where they can transition more effectively.
Yeah.
And I would put a spin on that. We're potentially looking at the advent of executive agility. This is a boiling point. This is a tipping point where executives are now starting to ask the right questions and identify where some of the past learned lessons were in large transformations. And that includes bringing on those executives, not only to sign the check, but understand what is it that we're implementing and giving a seat at the table to those individuals that can be agile champions for the organization. That's a new thing. We've been talking about that for quite a while, but the real action behind that for organizations hasn't quite hit the masses yet. And we're starting to see that now in large Fortune 500 enterprises. So I think 2022 is going to start seeing more executive agilists, if you will. Maybe because the practitioners are coming to a career point where they're reaching those levels and are able to influence it, or maybe because the executives have realized that they need to be a part of this for it to work well. Right?
And if I can play off of that real quickly, Ernesto, one of the things I know you're big on as well, we just talked through this quite a bit, is I don't know if it will be a trend for 2022, but I hope it will be, with trying to bring those executives in, helping them understand that a lot of what we're doing, it's a change management effort, right? So when we put it in that context, which you and I just did for some of our clients, then I think they better understand, well, this isn't just about spinning up teams then, right? Then we can go back to John Kotter, right? We can go to the 8-step change model. We can go to things like that. And I think they understand those better. Some of those executives, it's not as foreign to them maybe as this, nebulous agile thing. So I love trying to put it in that context. And again, maybe that plays in with more of a focus, agility on helping executives get their minds around it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Dave, because it's very common that we come across, whether it be talking to a client for the first time, where they bring us in to train. Hey, I want you to train some teams, right? Well, that's just stepping right into step 6 or 7, maybe creating quick wins or building on the change, but skipping an entire set of foundational things, creating a sense of urgency. Referring to the 8 steps you talked about, Dave, and it's hard to pick that one item and make the whole thing work because, well, we didn't set the right foundation.
Yeah, you mean it doesn't work so well if you just skip the first 5 steps and then go right to the end and assume everything's going to go well, right? So absolutely.
And that's another potential prediction. That's a hard word. Anytime we use that, we probably are wrong by definition. Right?
Well, it's being recorded too, so someone will go back.
That's right. Always dangerous.
How about an estimate? The idea that remote coaching will become more and more common, right? And that presents a lot of challenges for us coaches. I try to live and breathe remote and distributed collaboration, but the truth is remote coaching is difficult, right? There's a lot that we pick up by walking the floor, by understanding where some of those challenges are, by just simply being there, doing a Gemba where the teams are doing the work. When we're doing this remotely, we're talking about an entire new set of dynamics that need to be considered. How do you include yourself in such a way that you're able to bring value in a reasonable amount of time? Right, Dave, we had a recent engagement where just onboarding us into the organization took weeks. Just the administrative aspects of the tools and the accounts, and here we are really eager to get involved with the teams, but not having the right access to the tools was a challenge and delayed the whole thing, right?
Well, I think we
smile. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Peter.
So if we if we stay on track for anticipations, whatever might be coming, right, that the providers of Agile education and coaching will need to learn what's missing from the remote formula. So a business partner of mine recently went on site for a coaching engagement. And one of the first things he shared with me in feedback is, oh, wow, there's so much that I've missed, not like longed for, but missed in terms of interaction. By not being able to do this, I had become almost complacent with the virtual environment because that's all we had, so you make it work the best you can. But if we don't get those reminders, those tastes of what might we be missing, right, by not being in person, then we're not going to be able to provide the services, right, that we need.
I wonder, folks, with what you're talking about, two things. That the remote thing is front of my mind now. I won't make a prediction about this, but I'll at least ask the question: are we going to see, because of the move to more remoteness, people are we going to start seeing a lot more overseas coaching in the U.S.? Right? Is that going to be just like outsourcing call centers in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s was a big thing? Are we going to start seeing people say, look, now because borders aren't nearly as big of a deal, shouldn't I maybe go to look at Mexico for my Agile coach? Why not? Right? Cost is lower. Is the quality going to be worse? Are we going to see that?
Well, Dave, we've already seen it in the training environment. So why not in the coaching environment?
And when you say that, Peter, you're saying there's been a trend where now people are going to cheaper classes hosted in another country simply because they don't have the overhead, the expenses that we have in the US.
Right. Or instructors from those other countries are providing their services in a different time zone. So if that's happening there, then yeah, Dave, maybe why not? Why might we, why shouldn't we expect some coaching services to come in across borders?
And I don't disagree with that, but I will add one caveat, and that is different from training and coaching. Coaching is more interactive. It requires same time zone, real person to person, whether we're doing it over video or whether we're doing it by visiting. There's observing, there's inspecting, there's adapting that needs to take place on the job while you're doing it. If we're talking about overseas with distributed time zones that are far apart, that's going to make it difficult for a coach to provide quality service. And I find it interesting and very insightful, Dave, that you suggested Mexico as the alternative, right? Because that is in the same time zone for many of the, in our case, American customers. I think time zone is going to become an important factor in that consideration. Right?
Yeah. Well, we beyond Mexico, right? South America, right? So companies that maybe previously outsourced 5 to 7 time zones away, right, are now outsourcing 1 or 2 time zones away by going straight down, right?
Yeah, and then the question becomes, how do we mitigate that? How do we improve collaboration across time zones, right?
Well, one of the things you do is stop using the term I just used of outsourcing, right? It's augmenting. It's not outsourcing. If you're outsourcing, then we're not really talking about agility anymore, right?
Or distributing, right?
Distributing, yeah.
Yeah. Great topic. I'm very interested in exploring how organizations are going to react once we are able to bring people back. And what I mean by that, I think we're all predicting that, hey, there'll be a form of hybrid. We know that remote is here to stay. But I do expect that the pendulum is going to swing the other way for a short period of time. We're all eager to get together, to be physical. And when that opportunity presents itself, I think we'll see a drive again toward, oh, I can get together with my colleagues again. Let's do that. But then some of the realities of the conveniences of remote and the cost savings and the advantages are going to be evident, and we'll see a balance again where we'll end up in a happy medium, right?
Yeah, right. Because this isn't always just the corporate decision to open up the office; it's the individual decision. Where do I want to work?
Yeah, we're seeing the great resignation, right? With organizations that aren't willing to listen to those points, or that maybe weren't a good fit for the individual staff. That we're seeing numbers like we've never seen before as far as resignations and individuals changing jobs. So people are going to vote and express their opinion with their feet if they're not heard. At the top of the hour, and as usual, it leaves us wanting more, right? Because we could do this for quite a while, just geeking out on some of the cool topics we're seeing out there.
Well, you know what, the showbiz, one of the showbiz rules is always leave them wanting more.
If you want to fight, it reminds me of the old Batman. You want to find out what happens? Come back next week. Same bat channel, same bat time.
There's a Saturday Night Live skit, and quick commercials they used to run. It says, "Hey, breaking news: the president is dead." The president of what? We'll tell you when we come back.
Right.
All right. I have a hard stop, team. We'll follow up offline. Okay. Great catching up. Take care.
Yeah, good to see you both. Bye.
Be well. Bye-bye.